The Xbox 360 is 10 years old. 10 years, gentlemen. 10. Count them. Look at them.
I am also 10.
Justin, are you
Today.
10? No? Ben Howard, are you 10?
I am 10 multiplied.
This many.
Nice. It's been a good long period of time. They're still making games for it.
still
GTA
out
5
there.
came out on
Yeah.
it. Titanfall, Tomb Raider.
This has kind of been the last year for the Xbox 360. This is kind of when we've seen the transition where we're not getting more Xbox 360 PS3 games. Everything is getting canceled for that in favor of Xbox One.
But of course,
PS4.
now you've got that hot backwards compatibility, so you're going to be able to resell and bundle all 360 games with every remake and sequel.
I think that's really kicked people in the nuts who are working on HD, like the guys who did Castle Crashers HD. They had no idea backwards compatibility was coming, and they were like, "Oh, fuck you guys."
Yeah. It's like Meat Boy just came out on PS4 and everything. It's like, oh, well.
Well, it'll probably get like FIFA for like years to come, right? I mean, that's
Right.
always like the last few years are just like, here's like 9 more sports games, like Legacy Edition, or I think even, I want to say this year's games might have been branded Legacy Edition.
Oh, maybe. Well, Call of Duty did the thing where they stripped out the campaign as well.
Right,
Which usually
yeah.
seems to be the big AAA games, and then sports ones are kind
It's
of.
because they're not allowed to call them Shitty Edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they are, but they didn't say. Anyway,
Oh,
we're
I
not
don't
here
know.
to
Did
talk
you
about.
play the campaign?
We're not-
like, you
no.
know, it's fine. It's, you know, a version without it, you're not missing out.
I was going to play it for Game of the Year stuff, but maybe
Yeah,
not. Maybe
Okay.
not. Maybe I'm all right.
You're probably okay. There's some neat
you
moments.
probably-
Let's not talk about the sort of the gray years of the console. Let's talk about its wonderful youthful prime. So what were some of the best games?
Red ringing left and right, that
Oh,
youthful
God.
prime,
Yeah.
man. The early days of 360.
How many did you go through? How many original 360s?
I only had
did you
2
have?
die. I had my first Elite. My launch 360 still works.
Really?
Because
Wow.
I bought an Elite and stopped using it before the first one could break.
Did you have any die, Ben?
I had one. I was pretty lucky, I think. I had one red ring, which I managed to wrap the towel around and, and nurse it back into temporary health until it finally gave up the ghost speed. No, I think I was pretty lucky because I only went through one until I
Yeah.
moved on to an elite.
So I also only went through one. In fact, they fixed that one and sent it back to me. But now, because it's a PAL one, and I moved over here, and like none of the games would work, so I had to bring it with me. But it's like I had to take off the faceplate and stuff because the disc drive is so broken that I have to wedge a knife in every time I take the disc out. So now it just looks like it's.
Well, we have a
destroyed.
room out the back which is filled with the carcasses of.
I was gonna say,
of
yeah,
dead
like
Xboxes,
there is some kind of
which,
like GameSpot repository of like
Yeah.
dead Xbox 360s.
Well, they don't want them anymore. We asked Micro when I was at 1UP, we were like getting rid of these consoles. We're like, hey, do you want to take our old original Xbox Ones and 360s? They're like, no.
Can't
No,
say
we don't.
Xbox Ones.
Xbox original.
Original,
No,
OG.
like we have
Yeah.
we have 2 red ring debugs over there. So it's just like, and no one wants those. They're
Yeah.
just like they're useless. So yeah.
Madness. Anyway, not talking about breaking hardware or old ass FIFA games coming out on old consoles. The best games that came out on Xbox 360. When I say that, Jeff, what's the first game that pops in?
I mean, it's Burnout Paradise. I mean, obviously, like, you don't bring me on here to not talk about Burnout Paradise. So.
Backwards compatible now as well?
No, it is not.
Oh, it's not?
It is something that they said was coming, but I don't think was part of that initial wave. So unless they've added it past that initial wave, I don't believe it's there yet.
In a weird way, that game is doing stuff now that, or did stuff then, which racing games now are basically hanging their sort of coats on.
It's yeah, I think so. And there was I want to say it was the Most Wanted, not the original 2005 2006 one, but the
Criterion.
05, yeah,
or
the Criterion Most Wanted was basically a Burnout game in terms of the way its multiplayer was structured. It's actually one of the sad things about where Need for Speed's been at this past couple of years is like it's just they lost it, they had it, and they lost it. They had it all figured out. They nailed it, and then now I've gotten so far away from nailing it that's a great driving game.
Well, they own the rights to Burnout now as well, so
Yep.
shall we see maybe a resurgence? It's one of these games that was super popular with critics, didn't sell an absolute bunch load.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like just the virtue of writing Need for Speed on the box makes it sell more copies than Burnout,
Right.
just because it's a more established brand. So that's why Criterion took over Need for Speed, and then they split off to do Ghost Games and all. So there's Burnout lineage all over Need for Speed now. It's just the wrong parts of the lineage are making its way in now. But I think that's a fantastic game. Gosh, I mean, Halo's golden years took place on the Xbox 360.
Halo 3, wonderful.
Yeah, 3 was a terrific game. Reach is a good game. ODST is a lot of fun. Like kind of those. If I had to pick 3 Halo games, those are the 3, right? Gears I think was pretty transformative.
Gears was a huge one
Yeah.
for me. What drove it for me, I was a PC gamer to that point,
Yeah.
or primarily a PC gamer. And a lot of my time in terms of multiplayer, which drove a lot of my game time, was playing early Call of Duty. It was playing Day of Defeat, Counter-Strike, in the office on a LAN with friends, and it was Live, which brought me over to console primarily, and Gears was a big part of that. Modern Warfare was a big part of that, but it was primarily the Left 4 Dead games. I mean, those games, when I joined GameSpot CNET back in 2006 in the UK, soon after that, those were the years when everyone in the office would get together as a social gathering online on Friday night and play Left 4 Dead.
Yeah, it was like Gears was one of those as well, like event games where it seemed like everyone was buying them so that they could all play with each other.
Well, and I think the social aspect of multiplayer gaming was, before that, for me, was driven by physically being with people in an office on a LAN. When I played online, and I played a fair bit online, it would be against randoms.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, being able to bring your group of friends together and play online, make a date when you all got home on Friday night to get pizza in and use Live, that transformed it for me, at least. And I mean, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, those games are pretty impeccable.
Yeah, and like a sort of a crazy, I don't know, showing of just how far multiplayer games have come on consoles, where you had a game like Left 4 Dead, which involves so much cooperation that people had sort of gotten used to playing with each other so much. It seems like that was better then than it is now. Like, I don't feel like the Xbox One or PS4 like playing with parties.
Well, great co-op experiences.
Yeah, well, yeah, they aren't. The great co-op experiences aren't always happening. And then, I mean, the party stuff on Xbox One was so mangled, and still, they've made improvements, but I feel like it's maybe not where it needs to be. And also, I think maybe we've changed, or I think people have changed to a certain extent. Where like I used to feel okay about wearing a headset while just playing a game, with random people and stuff like that. Like played a lot of Call of Duty 4. Like that was another huge Xbox 360 game for me. And was a little more willing to just kind of even just hear what people had to say.
Yeah. I plug in a headset.
Oh, how times have changed.
And now it's just like, wait, I don't want to hear anything.
I do not wear a headset unless I'm the only time I ever wear a headset now for multiplayer or any form of gaming is when I'm in a private party with friends. I mean, that's it. I mean, I don't play with randoms.
Yeah,
at all.
and now it's like you hear voices coming out of your TV. It sounds, for
like, where's that coming
that
from?
was like something that was like super ubiquitous and during the Xbox 360 lifespan. Yeah,
it was like, wow.
Now it's like a nuisance. You're just like, what is this idiot? Like he's talking to someone else, or like worse nowadays. They're running a live stream, and they've left their chat on to the game, so you're listening to them commentate their own game as they're playing it, and you're just like, shut the fuck up.
What happened to the days of watching guys doing cocaine while playing Uno?
That was maybe, if I had to pick one moment for Xbox Live, it was the night I tuned in and saw Xbox Live Vision cameras and like people just straight up Canadians doing lines while playing Uno.
You need to tune into PlayStation Live or whatever that thing is. Some weird stuff happens on there.
Is that still going strong?
Oh yeah,
that's the legacy.
Strong may not be the right word.
Well, very strong.
There's a section of society that's drawn to it.
So Xbox Live, I think, changed things, but it was also the achievement points. Like that was the only time in my life when I cared about these, and was working at OneUp.com and EGM, and we had active competitions to see who could get the most achievement points. And you're just playing all these shitty games like Avatar, things that are going to be like, how quickly can I get 1,000 points for this?
And how many points did you guys get over there?
See, I was never as high as Shu. Like Shu was our de facto. He was the Dan Shu, editor-in-chief of EGM at the time. He was our hand. I'm up 40,000 now.
46, but I was up 46.
I have 2 accounts, so I have 25
Oh,
on my old UK account before I moved to the US. But
at some point I dropped off, but that was actually.
Well, you're gonna wag your digital dick though.
Exactly.
What's yours?
Well, mine is now 150,000.
Well, I was going to say, if you're going to speak to anyone about achievements, because I remember watching this man from the UK, so I was like,
we ran videos on the site about how to easily get achievement points.
NBA
back then,
2K6.
Yeah, like all those early games. But that was, that was like that era of GameSpot. It was like, me and Kerry Guskos and a few other people on staff got super into that stuff. Like Carrie and I bought Japanese 360s so that we could buy Japanese games to get points.
In school, it was like we had friends who never owned a Microsoft console, never didn't touch the original Xbox, and suddenly we were all just like going at it at achievements and like passing, like in college, and passing games around, being like, oh, you want this one? It's like an easy 1,000.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
They just made me feel really old, Danny. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, but I had to say college because I saw you recoil when I said school.
But it's like they still exist, but I just don't care. I mean, PlayStation introduced trophies, like okay, I never
like
chased them.
That stuff came in too late. You know, if you had to pick one number pretty early on that one, and it was like, okay, you're adding trophies midstream on the PS3, like whatever. And now you know, Steam achievements have never meant anything, and you know,
and they never hit reset on Xbox One, so he never felt like you wanted to get back into
right.
that.
And also just, you know, I think things got muddied in terms of like where the lead platform was and where third parties were kind of putting their efforts and stuff like that. Like, you know, Sony's you know, the market leader right now, which I think changes a lot of things for that stuff as well. So yeah, but for me it was just strictly like, no one was interested in keeping up anymore. It was just like, okay, well, I'm done with this. This is insane. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Oh God, why am I doing this? The only Andrew Reiner at Game Informer I think he is higher than I am.
The leader.
He was one of the
Well, and part of it was like
crazy.
It was this thing that it introduced into games that made me want to dive into them deeper. It's like if it's a game that I love, I just want to get the most out of it. Like Assassin's Creed 2 was, I think, the last game that I did absolutely everything. Maybe you know, BioShock was before that. But it's like, oh, well, I just want to get all 1,000 achievement points, everything for the DLC. What's everything that I can get out of this game? And it was like proving to myself that I have milked it for everything.
Yeah, it was a super interesting like barometer of how much of a game you'd completed. Outside of the sort of the big AAA stuff, though, also on the Xbox 360, we saw the sort of rise of independent development hitting console. Well, actually, probably just across the board, like the real big rise of the indies, but especially being able to play indie games on consoles and games that went on to sell millions.
Xbox Live Arcade was just an amazing platform for these really tiny games that, I mean, we mentioned Uno, but Braid and Castle Crashers, like bringing the behemoth to prominence was because of XBLA.
There was, I mean, the Summer of Arcade was a real highlight of every year while that was running, and I mean, one of my favorite games on the entire years of 360 is Shadow Complex, right? I mean, it's like still waiting for that sequel, right? But you know, there were real highlights that came through the live program, and that did change the landscape because Sony was way behind on that. At that point.
For sure.
Totally, and then you know, it was one of those things that like it seems insane now that they limited it to like one game a week.
Right.
But nowadays, you know, it's like tons of those games, tons of download-only games are coming out to PS4 and Xbox One, and like there's no fanfare. Just like stuff just appears, and you're like, oh, is that? I didn't realize that was coming.
Stuff
to
I've
PS4.
never heard of just appears on PlayStation.
Yeah,
these days.
with like no marketing. You know, it's just there's no it's just stuff just shows up out of nowhere.
It seems really special. They almost felt like AAA games, just like sort of cheaper little. Like when Meat Boy came out, I remember everyone was like waiting for Super Meat Boy to come out that morning.
But then, you know, there were definitely weeks where like the game was awful, and you were like, "Man, this sucks." They need to put out more than one game. Like, I think there was a double edge to that.
And it's a little bit behind the scenes, but back then we also had access to all of those games for free. Like as things were downloaded or as things were put onto the system, we had our debug units would let us just download and play these and try them out, which we don't have now with Xbox One and PS4. But it was like a way to try these out and see like, well, what's worth it? And just having immediate access to everything, or stuff before it came out.
That stuff was really spotty, because there were games that showed up there that never shipped.
Yeah.
Like someone was working on an RBI baseball years and years ago, and at one point that showed up and was playable, and it was like, okay, is this ever going to get announced or come out? And turns out no. It never got officially announced. It came out, like, you know, word of it kind of got out. You know, there's supposed to be an NDA in place to talk about stuff that appears on Partner. I feel like enough years have maybe passed that it's maybe okay now, but yeah, like stuff like that would happen. There was that Saints Row downloadable game that was like the Guide the Bullet thing that showed up there. And I don't think that ever came out. Yeah, that stuff was cool.
And then I guess in terms of the increased power that we saw in those consoles coming out of the previous generation with the original Xbox and PlayStation 2, you know, Just Cause 3 is out next week, and we saw the sort of the rise of the open world game, where like, you know, GTA 3 had obviously done really well on PS2 and had its own trilogy, but in the time the Xbox 360 was out, we got Grand Theft Auto 4, we got, you know, Red Dead Redemption.
Elder Scrolls Oblivion, one of the early games, was, I mean, that was a real, it's funny, you know, obviously you guys chatting about Fallout last week in terms of some of the technical issues with that game. But at that time, Elder Scrolls Oblivion was the cutting edge, and I remember seeing the initial screens and then seeing what that was doing running on that new console, which was only a year in at the time, I think.
Very early.
And it was it was astonishing. Like,
and it came out at a time that people were starved for something
Yeah.
unique on that console, you know. So like that came out, and people were like, okay, you know, unless they had played Morrowind on the original Xbox
Yeah.
or something, they'd never seen anything like that. It's just like
There
it's
were people buying
crazy.
that game who would never touch a fantasy game in their
Yeah,
lives.
I mean that game made Bethesda.
Yeah.
You know, it was in the right place at the right time, and it was just a great game.
And it introduced us to microtransactions with horse armor.
Right. Yeah. So many great firsts.
Exactly, in the Xbox 360.
Right.
Okay, let's before we wrap this up, if you had to pick one, we're coming into Game of the Year territory, which is the horrible Sophie's Choice of trying to figure out what the best game is in a catalog of wonderful games. So going down the couch, if you had to pick one game out of the Xbox 360 that would be your favorite, Jeff, first of all, what would it be?
Oh man, I'm gonna probably stick with Burnout Paradise for the 360. Rock Band probably one of the Rock
yeah,
Band
Rock
games
Band, yeah.
probably comes close.
God,
Like,
yeah, that whole thing happened as well.
Yeah.
Justin, what about yourself?
It's probably the Coke, but I guess Uno. Not Castle Crashers. I have so many fond memories of just like sitting with friends on the couch, just plowing through that game. Like I loved Castle Crashers.
Excellent. Ben?
well, best experience left it to just fond memories, but probably the best game, Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's still Rockstar's best game.
Last time we gave him a Game of the Year as well.
Yeah.
2010? Is that right? It was right in the end of the
It was 2010.
console. Yeah.
I feel like, yeah.
Tremendous game. People can't wait for a sequel.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about Bully though. If we're going to talk about Rockstar's best game.
Oh, Canis Canem Edit.
Yes.
Okay,
Canis
yeah.
Canem Edit. You may know it as.
That's all right.
I guess that did come to 360.
But the best
And
game that came
some
out in
PC.
360 was John Woo's Stranglehold anyway, so it
Oh.
doesn't matter.
Oh, it was
Talk about
Rockstar
sleeper
Table
hits.
Tennis, right?
Also,
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah, table tennis.
Table
is
tennis
great.
was so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, like that was though. As someone who was colorblind, that game was a huge bummer because it was all about the color. The ball, the spin on the ball was represented by a color, and they had no options for like.
Sure,
That was one of the first games
representing
where
that in
my wife would literally like, it's so realistic.
Yeah.
You know, this is the future of gaming technology.
Right, this is it. This black room with Jesper looking at you, angry. Guy's a dick.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on. Ben, Justin, and Jeff. Appreciate
you.
it.
Anytime.
Let us know what you think of the Xbox 360 10 years later. Are you ready to pick one up? What's your favorite game that came out during...
Now's the time.
I know, right? Yeah, super cheap, and it probably won't break, and if it does, you won't get a replacement. Yeah, what's your favorite game on the Xbox 360? Let us know in the comment box below.